that didn't really help me. I mean, 2 plus 2 is still 4, right? I got a little higher math.
Right.
Where I got benefit there were the relationships that I formed with other folks who had other networks in other parts of the country. That's what created probably a bigger opportunity for me than any other part of that experience, which is really kind of what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I was taking, from a college network that I took for granted, added it to, and co-joined with however many, 1,000 others, and wow, but if you don't have that, it's hard to even imagine it.
That network is really important.
It is, and it's each network, what I'm learning more and more, they just operate in different worlds.
That's right.
And so growing up in Virginia Beach and then coming to work at Peacemakers, I'd never operated in that network before in that world.
Right.
I remember when we were piloting the Refocus program, and I had a student that came in, and I didn't know. I mean, growing up in Virginia Beach, I could not comprehend a kid being inside of the 3rd grade and not being able to read.
Right.
That just blew. So the student I had him out on the playground, he's playing, and he whispers in my ear, "Mr. Manning, I can't read." Yeah. And it just ushered me into a totally different world, a new network, where they needed another network, a helping hand. And so, it is fascinating to me that these networks are, they're the things that can actually help us, help our community. And so
I derailed the whole conversation a little bit. I'm sorry about that. But, first of all, COVID has created a challenge, right? So let's just assume everybody is starting at the same place, which clearly we've acknowledged they're not. I mean, how's that working? You got 65 kids, they're all local. You're providing some, tutoring, if you will, or at least monitoring, which is a big deal. Because I can tell you this, up until, call it recently, if you left me alone and gave me a choice to go play with my buddies outside or participate in my Zoom class, I'm playing with my buddies outside. I get around to it until I'm until I'm held accountable for it. So that's a bigger part of the piece and part. So where are you finding the challenges? Do you need help with volunteers? Or are you needing? I know the need's great. But let's get down to what can I do to help?
Some of the practical ways that people can help. And so one thing, we're talking about students being behind. So we can have a student that's entered inside of the program, and let's just say they're 50 assignments behind. That each one of our classrooms functions as a pod, 6 students inside of there, and our instructors are incredible. But at times, it's impossible sometimes to catch a student up when you have to worry about 6 others who are just as equally behind sometimes. And so having one-on-one tutor pullouts, that's one of our greatest needs right now. We can have people come and they can designate themselves. We can designate them to a specific student where they come, spend an hour a week with that student, helping them catch up with assignments or working on some academic enhancement with them. And so, that's one of the big needs there is just doing one-on-one pullouts and probably our greatest need.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
So, how many,
We're 64 students. So with 64 students, we could use one for each student, honestly. And that's the real answer is each one of these students can use the help. If they're already on level, we can help them get advanced. That's our goal. And so, I think each one of our students having someone that can come do one-on-one tutoring with them would be amazing.
Right. So how do you find the kids for the school? I'm sorry.
Yeah. And along with that, I think it goes back to what I was saying about I think we way underestimate the depth of the need. We've got a mechanism with the day program where if you can only volunteer for an hour a week, we can use you and make it work. But a lot of times when we talk about mentoring programs, for instance, and I'm going to mentor a kid, and that's going to be great. What that really means is I'm going to take a kid out to McDonald's once a week on Saturday, kind of thing. And the truth is,
doesn't really feel like
it
mentoring
doesn't make enough of a dent. We're talking about 4 or 5 touches a week with a kid to actually give them that level of support we need. And so the challenge is to pair volunteers that might not have that much time with kids that have that much of a need. And it's a real challenge. It really is. And so we're still working on that with ways to make all that work. But when you were talking about going to college. Well, in a community like South Rocky Mount, which is where we work, 1 out of 14 kids is going to go to college.
Right.
Yeah.
And that number's not good enough.
No.
And when we're talking about our workforce and
our
being
dropout
prepared,
rate is something, was it 19%? I mean, from a system-wide for the city.
And,
And, again, it's not necessarily a kid's fault, right? And it's not necessarily the school system's fault.
Right.
But it is about figuring out how do we create enough opportunity for other folks to be able to at least be able to see over the fence or sit at the table,
Right.
And I think, one of the challenges that we as nonprofit leaders and hopefully as city leaders is how do we get the people with resources and knowledge and networks to really get to personally know the people that have the needs,
right?
And do it with the right perspective and the right attitude. Those kinds of issues are really tricky, right? Because you've heard the phrase "white savior," right? Coming down into a low-income neighborhood,
sure.
that kind of thing.
When I hear that, I think of that TV show. Remember The White Shadow from 1970 something? It was a terrible show.
I wasn't around then.
So, I remember. Don't bother to go look it up. It's not worth it.
Oh man.
But it's a real thing, and people do it kind of out of a good place in their hearts, But people that are in a low-income environment can sniff that out, and man, it just doesn't work well. And at Peacemakers, we're trying to come at it from the perspective of every single person has value to our community. Every single person has gifts and talents that God has given them that we all need. And so if you, as a member of our community, are not flourishing, then I'm missing out on what you could bring to the table, right? So I need you to be flourishing. I need each person to be flourishing. And if you're not, we got to fix that so we can all be where we need to be.
Right.
And that's different than saying, you poor people, let us come give you a bag of groceries kind of thing. It's just we've got to work on changing that mindset, I think.
Well, it's about teaching somebody how to fish too, right?
Yeah.
That's really what you're talking about at some level. It's about participating. It's about creating a fabric of society that really makes a difference.
Right.
So, so how do you get there? How do you connect those folks? I mean, that's you've been working at it for a long time. I'm not going to try to solve the problem for you, but I'll promise you this: I'll be a champion and help you in whatever way I can to advance the ball.
Yeah. Well, changing a mindset is not a microwave process. It's a slow, it's a crock pot kind of process. But I think one of the best things is when you can get people that are quote unquote going to be served working side by side with the people that are coming to serve. Right. And you have those relationships forming organically.
Sure.
Then they get to know each other. They start telling each other stories, and you realize, hey, you know what? This person that I thought was way different than me is not so different.
Right.
They want the same thing for their kids that I want for my kids. It's just a difference of circumstance and environment in life. Right. And one of my pet peeves is
maybe even perspective, but that's based largely on experience.
Yeah,
level,
it is.
Right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. One of the things that's the hardest is people that don't live in that kind of environment. We talk about kids' education success and all that kind of stuff. They immediately go to, well, it's just bad parenting, And there's struggles.
There's an element.
There's struggles there, that's for sure. But the truth is, if you've got a single mom who is working 3 part-time jobs to keep the lights on, and so her choice is, I've got to help my child in this virtual environment that we're in, or I've got to keep the lights on. What is she going to do?
She's got to keep the lights on.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And so it's a little.
Right.
I think sometimes it's a little bit too easy to judge that from the outside when you're not walking through the day-to-day of it.
Right.
And I'm not saying there aren't parents that need to step up and do things better, but
there's always the bad example, right? There's always that one person that makes it an easy statement to make, and it's not necessarily true. The welfare queen. What was that lady's name who got caught for stealing all this welfare dollars? It doesn't matter, but but anyway, she becomes like the poster child for everything that's wrong with EBT and on and on and on.
Right.
Which is not the norm.
Yeah, it's not the norm. And one of the things I think was really cool, like when you're talking about getting them into the context and working with them.
Right.
I've seen this firsthand, even with people that I have on staff. You know, they come from a different background, and they're learning. They're just like me,
Right.
and that is the advantage of actually coming to work with us, is that you get to get inside of a context that you probably don't spend a lot of time in. Some people at
Right.
least, and that's an incredible thing, because even for myself, growing up in a different city, Virginia Beach, like I said, and coming to South Rocky Mount, and
Sure.
working in our community, it still was like different worlds.
Sure.
And there's we can teach a man how to fish, right?
Right.
But even while you're teaching him to fish, you got to learn how to teach him, right? And so there's some things
And you
in
gotta
there,
feed 'em.
right? And you got to feed. Yeah, there's a lot of things there that you got to learn whenever you're working with somebody like that. And one of the things I was just mentioning with my staff today that I was learning as I was trying to teach them how to fish was, man, I got to talk to people like they're somebody and not like I'm somebody. Right? That's but I would have never learned that except for being inside of that context. I think, well, probably I could have learned it
You would have
somewhere else.
gotten there.
But the point, it would have gotten there.
Yeah.
But this has speeded up the process, I guess I should say.
Right.
Because it's easy to walk in with the savior complex and hey, look down, hey, I can help you, and learning how to communicate, not just with my words, but with my actions, making them feel important rather than trying to prop up myself.
Right.
Working in our context helps us with that. It humbles me more than anything,
Sure.
And so, anyway, so that's a benefit of working with peacemakers, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, you can learn that in other places, but I do think that volunteering with us definitely helps out with that, because you're learning a different context and another world, so to speak.
And I will say too, a lot of people say, well, I love peacemakers, but I'm not coming to South Rocky Mount because it's too violent down there. I don't want to. I've been working in the South Rocky Mount community for 12 years.
Yeah.
And I've never one day felt unsafe. I think the perception is a whole lot worse than the actual problems. There are problems, there are shootings, they happen, but the day-to-day life is not like that, and there are some great people that live in that community, just like there are in every community.
Yeah.
And I feel like if people would just come and spend time, that perception would be a whole lot different.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's one thing that we've got to work on at Rocky Mount, right, is breaking down perceptions that are just wrong.
Yeah.
Well, I've grown up here all my life, and I don't feel unsafe anywhere in town. I never have.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've painted houses and everywhere, all over town. I've spent a lifetime in the building that you guys are occupying, and so I don't really see that. I see it kind of like you. There are shootings, there are some challenges that we have, but no different than any other community. And it's not like people are, as soon as you drive by a certain zone, they're shooting at you. It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't. Yeah.
So anyway.
But our heart, man, is just for, we want to see families thriving, and, the whole idea, the reason we started Peacemakers is we are Christian guys, and we are driven by our faith. That's what motivates everything that we do. And we believe that the gospel can actually transform, renew, restore a whole community.
Right.
And so that's what this thing is about. And we've seen some great things. We've been at it, I don't know. I've been working in the neighborhood about 12 years. Peacemakers has been there since 2012. And we've seen some great things happen. We've still got a long ways to go. But we want to see the day where South Rocky Mount is one of the best neighborhoods in Rocky Mount to live.
Sure. And if I'm not mistaken, your ministry is built off of a model that's already been kind of existed and kind of tested and proven in Atlanta.
Down in Miami, yep.
In Miami, okay.
Yeah.
So, you may want to talk about that a little bit, too, because, it's not just this just crazy notion, hey, we're going to go do this. The savior complex.
Right.
It's a model that's worked. It's looking for a mixed income. It's about building a real community. And
actually, you're right, Atlanta too, because we took some elements from the people that were in relationship with in Miami, like Freedom School.
Sure.
Yeah. We got from there. Some of the after school stuff, some of the ways we deal with like emergency needs and that kind of things we get from there. The housing piece that Manny's working on is actually modeled after Focused Community Strategies in Atlanta,
right,
who's done the same thing in 5
Yeah.
different neighborhoods down there, creating a mixed income environment.
right.
And
I think one of the important things, we're talking about, the needs of the community, but I don't think we're spending enough time talking about the success of your program too, the impact that it's having. When I'm looking at Freedom School in particular, I happen to have some cousins who've been familiar with it for a long time, and I keep hearing a lot, ad nauseum, quite frankly. No offense.
Right.
No, that's not true. That's not true. But when you're looking at Freedom School, the impact that's having in terms of kids staying engaged, during that summer period of time, the retention rate, and where you're starting the next year, and the leveling of the field that's really having impact on, it's pretty significant.
Right.
I don't want to just throw out a number because somebody will go fact check me and I'll be behind, but I'm sure you guys know, but it's significant.
Yeah, so we pre-test and post-test in the summertime, and over the last 6 years or so, the average reading score goes up 14 months over the 7 weeks of the program.
Right.
And so, if a kid comes and they're 2 or 3 grade levels back, if we can get them for a couple summers in a row, we do a lot of one-on-one work, and we can get them back up to grade level.
Sure.
And that's important, because if you could take an elementary school kid and get them to grade level before they get to middle school, then they're probably going to be okay. They're probably going to graduate. But when you see these kids in middle school and they're on a 2nd or 3rd grade level, that's the kids we see dropping out in 10th grade.
Sure.
Right? Because they just cannot do the work, and they're so lost and so frustrated. What's the point?
Well, I was going to say, what's the impact of that on your whole psyche, your whole being? You go every day. I don't feel successful every single day. I mean, that can't be good.
Yeah, and at the heart of the Freedom School model is like that the philosophy is you're restoring dignity to children, right? Like you're looking at them and you're believing them again as they come into that classroom. And a big part of their growth is that we have instructors inside of the summer that are just empowering these kids, believing in them all the way, believing. And it's amazing to see that, we have the technical side, right, with academic enhancement and stuff, but just having people there that love, care, and will continue pressing on. One of the big things about Freedom School is like we don't kick people out of the program, right? We keep our students, and
that's right.
We do everything we possibly can to keep them ingrained inside of the program the whole 7 weeks, even whenever we're having behavioral issues.
Right.
And so those usually end up being the tough times when you want to give up and look down at a student. But even in those times, we're dignifying them.
And that's probably your biggest convert too, going forward. Really.
Right. Exactly.
And doing the same thing now with COVID.
Right.
So tell me about the housing project. Well, I mean, we were just talking about too many things about the community, but I mean, your solution to a lot of the challenges too. I mean, nobody's perfect, but that's what we're trying to push, right? And more volunteers, more resources, more.
Right. So with housing development, one of the big things, once again, getting back to the philosophy of it, is being a neighbor to our people. And so we want to be very near to our community here in South Rocky Mount, and even looking to move into the community ourselves. But with that comes we have to provide some sort of affordable housing that's actually improved and not displacing anyone. And so we are looking to, with the housing development program, is to make South Rocky Mount into a mixed income community, or that's our vision of seeing it one day. Well, partnering with our neighbors to do that. Obviously, it's not just our vision; it will be part of their vision. And so, that's the beginning of that. But I don't know how in depth you want to go in it. But
of course, the big concern is when you start talking about stuff like that is always gentrification.
Right.
But we, having gone to school off of the guys in Atlanta, we feel like there's ways that we can improve the quality of housing, the value of housing even in South Rocky Mount, without displacing the people that want to stay in the community.
Right.
And that's really important to us, and because they're our neighbors.
They are.
We want them to stay there. But at the same time, the truth is we need to raise the income levels in South Rocky Mount, because we want a grocery store in the community, right?
Right.
Well, you can't have that unless disposable income is at a certain level.
Right.
So all those things have to be looked at.
That's right.
But so the $1 million question is how to do that, and yet make sure all of our neighbors have a place to be.
Right.
And so that's what we're working on. And we feel like it can be done and will be done. But it's not, it's not easy. It's not overnight.
Right.
Everything's long term.
Yeah.
What I've always thought is affordable housing is less about the cost of the housing and more about my ability to be able to pay for it.
Right.
I mean, which is really second into what you're saying.
Yeah.
I can't get it cheap enough if the median household income is $20,000.
Right.
And I've got 2 dependents, and I don't care what supplemental income you're adding to it.
Yeah.
I can't make the housing affordable enough for you to have a high quality anything.
Yeah.
But if I can get your earnings up to $40,000 in the same set of circumstances, well, then the universe opens up in terms of what you're able to afford too.
Yeah.
And it's also about increasing the percentage of people that are homeowners, right?
Right.
That's right.
Because South Rocky Mount is probably 35 to 40% right now. It needs to be more like 75% to really be a thriving neighborhood. And the thing about it is...
But that's not even the city of Rocky Mount. City of Rocky Mount is closer to 50-50. It may be a net rental community versus home ownership, interestingly enough. So it's a community-wide issue as well.
Right.
But when you're talking about long-term chronic poverty, you've got to have vehicles to start building long-term wealth, right? To get out of that. And most of us in the middle class, our wealth is tied up in our home.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so home ownership has got to be a place where generation to generation, we can start building and transferring that wealth so that families eventually cycle out of poverty.
So what does that look like? Somebody give you a house, you rehab it, you then turn around and sell it to owner finance through call it a land bank of sorts. Is that sort of the model here that we're working off of, or is there greater specifics to that?
Yeah, no, I think that's part of the model right there is finding people first inside of the community that want to even desire to become homeowners, and then taking them through a home ownership program. But the properties that we will own, flipping those, making those into better homes that those first-time home buyers can actually get into, and then us financing it through a partnership with a bank here, a local bank. So,
Yeah, and just so everybody's clear, Mr. Mayor, on this issue, because it can be easily misunderstood, Peacemakers is never going to make one dime, off of housing. Everything, any income that comes in is being directly invested into the next house. So that we can continue, because the housing inventory in South Rocky Mount is not great now. There's a lot of houses that are dilapidated, deteriorated, that need a lot of work. A lot of energy inefficiency, right? That's why we see the electric bills that we see. And so there's a ton of work to be done, but it's not a money thing for us. We're just trying to say, okay, how can we get to the look of the neighborhood, the lifestyle of the neighborhood that we want to see.
I don't think anybody's ever accused a land bank of trying to profit from the endeavor, because usually there's just not enough there. In fact, it requires somebody to make a gift in order to kind of get it started, because if you're looking for fair market value, you just the math just doesn't get you there without gentrification actually occurring. And so and even then, is it really gentrification? I don't know.
I tell you, sometimes I feel like people listen to us talk and they're like, man, Peacemakers is just all over the place. You got so many different things going on. And it would be a whole lot easier if we could just say, we're going to focus on education and nothing else. We're not going to work on job readiness. We're not going to work on housing. We're just going to do education. But it doesn't work. It's got to be a holistic approach, because if it's not, as soon as you start looking at education, you have to start looking at the home environment. You start to look at the home environment, you've got to look at employment, and it all goes together.
I'm laughing because during my campaign, I did everything I could do to try to just create silos, right? Because they're easy, they're clean, you can measure them. And I try to avoid education like the plague, because can't anybody fix that? Certainly not in 5 years, right? That's a generational fix, right? And it requires a lot of other things. You make sure everybody, the household, stable enough that I can think, and on and on and on. But as you start peeling the layers of the onion, and if you're really trying to make a difference, well, it's everything. It's me not having to move as a kid 3 times in the course of a year to be able to stay on grade level. It's me being able to eat as a kid. It's me as a dad trying to support my family. It's, where's the job to be able to do that? Maybe I don't have the education. So it becomes a holistic care plan. And I think you do have more of a plan than it might seem in these conversations. You know, it is about creating a mixed income community in which right now you can at least come in. Phase one would be to try to provide, call it equitable opportunities for folks as it relates to just getting a basic education, and then layering on top of that, how do I deal with housing, and then layering on top of that, all while trying to preach the gospel. That's my general sense of it.
That's it. Yep.
That's it.
But you know, you're right. But when you start going here to here to here, oh my God, these guys have got like 7 personalities. Which one am I talking to?
That's right.
Are you Sybil? Is that Sybil I'm talking to, or is that Jesse, or is that?
Oh man. Yep.
I tell you, you know what you just said though about the education being, you know, too big to tackle, kind of thing. I hear you. I think we, and I know you don't really believe that, but I think we have to not look at it on a national basis or even a state level. We just have to say we live in Rocky Mount, right? So we have a responsibility for Rocky Mount, and we can bring a change here.
Sure we can.
This is a limited sphere we're in.
Absolutely believe that.
And we can fix what's wrong.
And it's a community issue.
The problem, the issue is, do we want to bad enough?
That's right.
That's the bottom line issue. Because if we want to fix it, we can fix it.
Absolutely, I believe that.
But
and I don't believe it's necessarily the domain of the school system either, or the public education system. I believe it belongs to the community. Right. And if we really, really, really want to make an impact, we can.
Right.
Yeah.
I know that's true. No, I try to avoid it because it's not as easy as 1, 2, 3.
No,
you do this, and then therefore this happens. Yeah. Well, it's this plus this plus this divided by the sum of this. You know, exponential and then.
Right.
Yeah, it's
if there was a silver bullet, we would have
already done it, right?
It's just not that.
And then compound it because every single kid is just different, right? So again, if everybody start at the same place, there's still different temperaments, talents, convictions, IQs. I mean, there's just they just aren't made the same.
They're not. And you make generalizations when you talk, but really, like you're saying, every kid is different. At the same time, we look at like policy level stuff and we see, okay, like in our neighborhood, we have Williford Elementary.
Sure.
Some of our kids go to D.S. Johnson, some go to Baskerville and Fairview. And those schools that are located in our low income communities have the hardest time attracting teachers.
Right.
Because it's just a more challenging environment, right?
Right.
And so the question is, and so what we end up with is our kids that have the highest set of needs paired with our most inexperienced teachers. And we think that's going to work, and it never does.
You know what's funny is I did a transition team, and one of those was education, where I actually asked a bunch of high school principals and teachers and others to try to kind of help on this whole educational matter. How do you get to that place? And so the question was posed, if you had $1 million, how would you spend it? And I was fully expecting, teacher bonuses, attract and retain. No, it was, help me get my kids to the place that they're at least in a good frame of mind that they come to school every day.
Yeah.